Good morning, guys. Good afternoon. I hope you all are having a good day so far. This video is for the notes for assignment number 13. There is no handout today. You all will be writing all of this stuff down in your own notebook. Make sure if you have questions, let me know. But I expect that everything that's typed on the screen, you will write in your notebook. For assignment number 13, we're going to be looking at solving quadratic equations by completing the square. We will define the quadratic equation in standard form, so what that means, and then we're going to look at the square root property. Let me get my pen here. The question you should be asking yourself while we're doing these notes is, what is the square root property? We will define the standard form and the square root properties. You guys are going to apply the square root property to solve some quadratic equations. Let me close this. Let's take a look at some definitions. What do we already know? Remember what you already learned. You know how to solve quadratic equations by factoring. We learned this. We learned how to solve quadratics the first weeks we came back from Christmas break. Solve quadratics. Quadratic. By factoring. Okay. This right here, x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. This is an example of a quadratic in standard form. Quadratic equation in standard. My writing's so bad today. And what standard form means is if you've got an x squared, you've got an x term, you've got some constant, you can have any coefficient out here. You can have any coefficient out here, and c could be any number. In this example, c happens to be -8. Here, our b value is 2, and the a coefficient, there's no number out here, but we always can assume there's an invisible 1. Okay, what we learned about this, we learned this already many weeks ago. Here were the steps to solve this equation. We had to find the factors. Okay, so I'm going to write them down so you can refresh your memory, and you can write this example down in your notebook. First, we had to find the factors. In this case, the factors were 2 and 4, and I want them to add up to +2, so this one has to be positive, and this one can be negative. Then I had to set each factor or term equal to 0, so that was setting each part equal to 0. Kind of separating it out into two little baby equations. And then the last part was solving for the value. So one answer is x equals 2, and the other answer was x equals -4. Those were the steps about solving quadratics by factoring. The interesting thing about quadratic equations is that there's so many different ways to solve them. There's not only one way. There's many different ways. I know of at least 6 or 8 different ways, and there's probably more that I don't know about. In this class, we're going to learn 4 of those ways. Factoring, we've already learned. Next, we're going to learn the square root property. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to learn the rest of them. But it's an interesting fact that there are so many different ways to solve quadratic equations. These kind of equations have just been around for so long, and people have been studying them for so long that they have come up with so many different ways to solve them. And first, we need to understand that this is what we're learning, the square root property. And it says if a squared equals b, then a equals plus or minus the square root of b. So what that says is whatever number or variable is here, and it equals something here, you can automatically write that it's going to equal plus or minus the square root of this number. Let's see what that looks like with some actual examples. But this is the actual square root property. So x squared equals 16. If we follow this rule, we went from, let me write it this way then. We went from a squared to a, right? So we're going to go from x squared to x. And then this, we just put it in the square root. My arrows are terrible today. Sorry, guys. We took plus minus square root of 16. In this case, we can reduce 16 to a 4. Excuse me. That was plus or minus the square root of 16. I can simplify that to plus or minus 4. And that's it. That's my answer. So that means that the solution to this quadratic, remember, anytime we have a square, it's a quadratic. The solution to this is actually just x equals plus or minus 4. And we don't have to do all those other steps like in factoring. This one, we're not quite ready yet. We have to get this 6 over here because I want it to look like this form, a squared equals b. So I'm going to just rewrite this real quick. X squared equals positive 6. Now it looks like the same form, and I'm going to go from x squared to x, and then plus or minus the square root of 6. Now 6, there is no square root that's even, so my final answer is actually just x plus minus 6. Okay. Once you guys finish these notes, you should write all of this in your notebook. You are going to work on these 4 practice problems. Solve the equations below by applying the square root property. I didn't find the practice problems. Gosh. You know what? I'll give you the practice tomorrow. For today, let me just show you how to write this out, how to solve this, and then tomorrow I'll give you some practice problems that look like this one. So the first thing is, let me rewrite it down here because I kind of messed up. I forgot about this morning. Z squared equals 18. Just rewriting the equation. What we're going to do is the square root property says that we got to take all the square root, okay? All the square root. And now, so in the previous examples, it was just one letter, but it also applies to when you have parentheses. So what that means is z minus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 18. Okay, so that's the first step. At the end of the day, we're still trying to figure out what the value of z is. So we got to get this 6 to the other side, and we're going to write z equals plus or minus square root of 18 plus 6. I can simplify this radical using the product rule. Square root of 9 times square root of 2 plus 6. Z then equals plus or minus 3 square root of 2 plus 6. So the two solutions that I'm going to have here are z equals 3 square root of 2 plus 6. So basically we have two solutions, one for the positive side, one for the negative side. So that's one solution, and our second solution is z equals negative 3 square root of 2 plus 6. And when we start looking at graphing, we're going to see where, just like we saw those parabolas yesterday, for some equations, both of these are solutions. Okay, let's go ahead and say that's it for today. I won't give you the practice today. I'll give it to you tomorrow, and we'll go over that practice. And then you can write all this notes down in your notebook. For today, you can go ahead and answer this one in your notebook, but leave a space in your notebook so that you can have some room for practice problems. No, you know what? Let's do this. Just leave this as it is. Write this in your notebook, and tomorrow I'll give you practice maybe online, or I'll do a printout for you. Okay, if y'all have any questions, please let me know.